All right, y'all, we just sat down with DJ Smith, founder of Holiday and Harvest Tree Farm right here in Austin, Texas. This is a seasonal business. He's got a short amount of time to make all the money he needs for the rest of the year. And we're talking pumpkin patches, live Christmas trees, Easter egg drops out of helicopters. It's a fascinating business that he has to execute in a short amount of time. He's really the heart of what we think about as Christmas and what a business owner can do during that time to lift up the holidays. Let's jump right in. All right, team, we are here with DJ Smith. Man, talk about a business that is not something you see every day. Christmas spirit, but also highly seasonal. You know, they kind of doing a lot of their work here in a very short amount of time. But also somebody's come from a path that many of you probably are currently in. And so we're going to get into all that. But, man, DJ, so good to have you in today.
Oh, I appreciate you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk a little bit about Holiday and Harvest, seasonal business, but also just kind of how I got here.
Yeah, man. Well, I think that's where I want to start, man. I do want to start with before DJ, the entrepreneur, the DJ, the operator, the owner, what was life? I mean, talk to me about growing up first. Where'd you grow up? And then what were kind of the initial professional chapters of your life?
Yeah, so I grew up in California, Southern California, a little town called Agora Hills. Relatively kind of secluded, small town in Los Angeles, but just had, kind of a wealth of experience with, friends and family members and kind of people closest to me that were either operators or owners of businesses, big and small.
Oh, you had that around you, huh?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would say my dad's my father's an entrepreneur. I saw a lot of my friends, have parents that, from either a successful or either a struggle standpoint, were business owners. And so I always had this kind of curiosity of my dad's a business owner and he has this type of lifestyle, but all the other people and their parents, had this curiosity. What's that look like? What's that type of business ownership look like? What's that lifestyle provide? I'm sorry.
What did Dad do?
So my dad's in entertainment. He does super niche business. He does market research and consulting for TV shows, sort of pilots and launches them, which provided a wealth of cool experiences for me as a college kid. I remember getting sort of the opportunity to intern at Jimmy Kimmel Live or, just these really cool, unique experiences. So, also, I think that was a big player for me. My dad owned a business that I got to see and visualize that sort of was felt cool or felt unique or differentiated. So there was a big influence there on sort of, I think, what kind of business my dad had started, but also, we lived in LA. So what better industry for your dad to be in than entertainment?
That's good. I can imagine that being, that's something that's probably, we never really talked about it on the show. I think we talked about folks who were influenced by their parents, but less about I think it just occurred to me right now, a lot of the normal 9 to 5s, the parents are kind of just away and then they come back and you almost have no understanding of what they did when they're working.
Sure.
Whereas the entrepreneur parents, the owner operators, there's no line of demarcation. Their life and their work is all together. So the kids always seem to understand better what their folks do. Does that kind of resonate?
100%. I remember big athletics. So my dad would always, be pushing me for athletics, but I remember the drives to and from a game or to practice. I got sort of this inside peek into sort of high level business discussions or even coaching discussions with, maybe somebody who is talent on a TV show. And I would kind of just sit there and honestly, put down all the distractions and sort of lean in a little bit and try to understand a little bit more. And then I would try to apply it. So I'd be watching TV. I would have heard a conversation that my dad may have had. And then I'd see it play out kind of in TV, or I'd see that differentiation from show to show. And I think that was a big theme for me, was always trying to find, I saw my dad trying to coach folks on what it was that sort of made them unique or made them different than their competitor. And so I always was applying differentiation to kind of whatever it was that I was doing. But those little moments in the car, or again, just even a sick day, my dad throw me in the car and take me to work. Those were really important days for me, I feel like, in this entrepreneurial journey that I've sort of manifested.
Yeah. Did you know that? So growing up in LA, you kind of watched Dad do this. Was mom working at all?
Mom's a teacher. So,
Oh, yeah.
I had the beauty of, again, kind of having a good instructor, a good resource at home, and her hours reflected sort of the hours that I was kind of gone as well. So I had great like home care, but also being able to be inspired, I think, was really important from an entrepreneurial father, and then the sum of both of those became, I think, a really stable and blessed to have kind of a stable childhood, and I learned a lot through both parents. But yeah, both working parents. So
That's cool,
work
man.
ethic was always like something I knew I had to have.
Hey, y'all, quick break. Here at American Operator, we believe that small business is the backbone of this country. But more and more, Main Street's getting swallowed up by big corporations, Wall Street, or some of them are just shutting down. And if you've ever thought about building something of your own, or just being a part of saving the American dream, head on over to AmericanOperator.com. It's your one-stop shop for inspiration, stories, and you'll get to join this really great community of patriots that believe our country is still worth fighting for. All right, back to the show. I can only imagine. That's good balance. I can imagine just kind of having a entertainment kind of gunslinging mentality and then a lot more grounded instructional. I can see that being a good recipe for where you're at now.
Totally.
Was any of those fields what you pursued right after college or whatever you did, or where did life land you?
Totally. Like, honestly, I thought I was going to be in entertainment, and
You
I didn't
did?
know.
Okay.
Yeah, I had like, I had so much exposure to it. And I think I also saw, like, from a mentorship standpoint, I look up to my dad, and I saw, again, just the potential of being able to kind of replicate something. And so, if anything, I kind of leaned in that direction. Went to college. I went to University of Missouri, and ended up kind of focusing on entertainment there. They have a huge journalism school, highly competitive journalism school as well, but it was focused on news, and I kind of wanted more of an entertainment focus. So I ended up kind of selecting I would say, like, the most media type of major that I could, which was communications. And in that communications degree, I tried to just apply more or less the logic of selling or communicating or marketing to, again, kind of a basic knowledge that I could take into any scope. I didn't know what part of entertainment I really wanted to get into. So again, just kind of serving like a broad kind of overarching college focus on communication to help me, I think, spur an opportunity into media. I actually joined my dad's company after graduating.
Oh, did you?
I did.
So you get to even further understand that.
I did, which I think was maybe one of the most pivotal moments in my professional career. And there's a couple of reasons why. Is one, I got even a better insight into how great of an operator, business owner my father is, and how much respect and how great of a business he had built over years. But I also felt the pressure of being the owner's son, and also feeling like, inevitably I had to be one of the sharpest, most polished people at age 22, and I was nowhere near being that. Like, I was the opposite, literally. So the daily struggle for me was real. It was super humbling to kind of, again, see your father run a business and everybody around, the business respect him, but like feel almost like you're starting at the bottom. My dad definitely had the theory of there's no handout. So like you're going to come in and earn. And so starting at the bottom there and really kind of visualizing the path to potentially ownership, I realistically was like, I think for me, I'd like do something different. I actually enjoyed the sale. Like, my dad's sales team was awesome, funny. The guys were likable. And I kind of was like, if maybe like I could do anything, I could probably do that at a high level. So kind of piqued my interest. I'm grateful for that opportunity, because it kind of created this opportunity for me to be a sales guy. And the product my dad sells was nothing that anyone would be buying from a 24-year-old. So I would have had to cut my teeth in that career elsewhere. So created a little bit of a diversion for me to go out and do sales, but it was great. Like, again, learned so much from my dad's company's called Smith Geiger. Learned so much from them and the people there, but was able to transition into a more sales-driven career with a Fortune 500 company, and really focus more on like corporate-driven, like growth and sort of development, more or less.
Going back to media for a second, when you daydreamed about it, when that was kind of like, all right, this is what I want to do, I'm curious, without knowing fully, did you have any kind of gut checks on like what your daydream might be in media? What is that?
Yeah, honestly, it's so funny because again, I like heard all these cool high level conversations with my dad, and I didn't realize what it took for my dad to get there. So like, I think as any young person or even like somebody who's thinking about entrepreneurship, like being able to understand the whole entire system that's sort of operating. So like you'll see one aspect might be the owner, you might see, a delivery person for a business, right? But like being able to understand that those aren't the only two individuals, right? And so I think kind of getting that insight and having gone into Smith Geiger and seeing all of that, I personally, I really kind of realized like the scope of knowledge that my dad had was accumulated in his 20s, 30s, 40s, and then he kind of started his business, in his late 40s. So I think I missed a lot, and so that was a eye-opening moment where I was like, oh, I've got to go experience so much. My dad was a local news guy for a while. He did this for a while. He worked for a corporation for a while, and so the sum of all of that, I think, aggregated for me as a life lesson that like I don't have all the answers and I needed to go get them, which I probably needed to do outside of this Smith Geiger company. And so
was there a specific moment that you remember going, that is like something your dad said or did that made you go, that's like 30 years to get that answer?
Oh man, there's like 100%. I can tell you the moment, and like still almost just hits me right in the face.
Really?
Like, oh yeah, because it's just such a funny, eye-opening experience where I kind of got my first like tap on the shoulder from the company to go do something important. Where like I had responsibility. I didn't just have I wasn't just shadowing somebody or doing anything like that. I was truly having to go do some work for the company that was going to be reflective and important for the for the entire organization. And I was asked to go run a focus group for a new show, and they were running a focus group in Chicago. And in these focus groups, a lot of the time what they'll do is they'll get, maybe 20 people in a room, they'll show them a TV show, and then they'll open it up and sort of ask poignant questions, qualitative questions to sort of get responses that they can kind of understand to see what the audience gauges, whether they like it or they don't, or they should do this or do that, or anything like that. So the preparedness was very important. Obviously, the execution during the during the actual show viewing was very important, and then having to compile everything so that everybody back home who wasn't there could understand what happened in the focus group was sort of my responsibility. And I'll be honest with you, I thought, I was coming in just kind of hot-headed, man. I was like, I've got a plan. I've got I had a binder. We're in the era of technological era, and I'm walking in with it's the first day of school, And so I just really struggled to keep up with it. Everybody was talking, I was jotting notes, and I just sort of was overwhelmed in the moment. Realistically, I just probably I kind of caved, and I was like, man, I'm falling behind. I'm not keeping up with these responses from people or anything. And I truly felt like I needed 3 of me or 4 of me. And I was watching other people who I respected at the company do this for a living by themselves, and I was like, I realistically know nothing. And it was a very humbling experience because I remember jumping on the plane on the way home and I was compiling all the notes and could barely even read I was so nervous that I could barely even read my own chicken scratch, And so that realization for me came because I was I was probably hoping that I could overachieve, and I realistically wasn't there yet. Intrapersonally, work ethic wise, mentally, I just was not there. I had a lot of growing up to do. So I'd say that was the moment that happened. And that in that moment, I would say the lesson that was learned was that from a fundamental standpoint, I have a lot of work to do. Whether that was from a personal standpoint, just showing up to the job, to understanding what the job requirement was, to actually being able to deliver a product that was good, was a struggle for me at age 23 or 24. So I'd say that was the moment, the aha moment where I kind of, again, had to kind of go out and live the real world a little bit on my own.
Yeah, getting your hands burned on the stove there is just, it's part of it's part of the forging process. So you get into, sounds like you do that for a little while, and then you get into this kind of more corporate setting. Are you doing that for quite some time?
Yeah, so I ended up kind of, following the lead. I had a couple buddies of mine. I always recommend, like, I'm a big mentorship guy. Like, I've always seemed to have found my way through mentorship. Like, I can draw a finish line on a piece of paper, but like, I cannot get there on my own. I have to have guidance, and I have to have people, trusted people too, right? Not just anybody, but trusted people to help me kind of get to that finish line. And I'd say one of my biggest character flaws is like I operate that way. So I kind of operate finish line first, and then I kind of have to draw the playbook, and I kind of have to learn hard lessons and all that. But having that kind of notion, I reached out to a buddy that had the earning or income that I kind of wanted at that age. It was a focus of mine to be able to provide on my own and kind of move out of roommate situations and sort of be a big boy and, kind of pull myself up by my bootstraps and hopefully, again, not, work for dad's company, but be able to kind of, again, work on my own and provide at a high level. And so a friend of mine was working a medical device job with a reputable company, making great money. And I asked him, how do I get your job? And he said, there's no way you can get my job without having to become an associate first. Like, you'd have to come in and you'd work under someone like me, and then you could potentially have my job. I said, oh, that sounds like a lot. How long does that take? 2 years. All right. Well, is there any way you can do that any faster? It's like, can I please expedite? And he's like, no, but what you could do, he's like, my boss and my boss's boss both sold payroll at this company called ADP, and they're highly respected, and they do these really great trainings where, if you can kind of prove yourself there, you're sort of the top 10%, and that's sort of who we look for as a company. And so I said, all right, well, ask him. I said, ask him, if I make President's Club, will you hire me? And it doesn't have to be written or anything, but I just want to make sure you're right, And so he calls me like the next day. He's like, yeah, if you go out and you make President's Club, he's like, you could probably not only get this job, but you could get a job probably anywhere, and with that kind of like, when he told me that, I kind of like took the weight, and I was like, well, I'm going to go do that. Like, I kind of like, I felt it, and I was kind of like, well, it sounds like that's what I got to go do, And so I started my sales career at ADP, selling payroll door to door. I was in California. I was actually selling in the Woodland Hills area. It's like the valley. It's 116 degrees during the summer, and you're door to door. So from a learning perspective, like, learned a lot fast doing that. Also learned a lot about sales. Like, I learned about the humility in the sales process. I feel like a lot of people are misguided when it comes to sales, and I sort of learned a niche. Like, I would, again, prospect in 116 degree heat, and I'd come in sweaty. And a lot of the time, like, people would ask me, like, oh my gosh, do you need water? And I would quickly realize there's something to that. Like, there's something to being humble in your approach. Don't just walk in and, hi, how are you? It's like, walk in and like wipe the sweat off your forehead and like be a human, real quick. And in doing so, I realized that I was pretty good. I obviously, like, the company would stack rank you, and which I'm competitive. I came from a sport, so I'm like, say less, dude. Stack rank me, and I'm gonna shoot for the top. But that type of exposure for me was where, I felt like I personally, like, I grew a lot having become a salesperson and learning what the value proposition is for a specific person. And it would change person to person. So just understanding what their needs analysis was. Again, I was selling a payroll product, like, not much to it, but just learning and like trying to be a sponge in terms of also, like, again, problem solving, right?
Mm-hmm.
So minimal problems in terms of the overall business function is payroll, but like a lot of hiccups there that we could potentially help with. And so I just kind of learned a lot there. And yeah, man, like my buddy said, I hit I hit the payroll President's Club, and once, I feel like everybody knows this, and if you're young and you're watching this, like, if you're struggling to understand if you're of value, like, man, these corporations that have these entry-level sales positions, you can find your value very fast if you can find a niche and you can find kind of a way to redesign the wheel, more or less, in your little territory that they assign you, and you can kind of find a groove. I built so much confidence there that, like, I felt like I could really sell anything, you know, and so that was fun because I ended up calling my buddy back and I was like, dude, I'm coming to the med device world. You know, I've got President's Club under my belt. And he wasn't kidding. Like, I mean, realistically, it was one of those things where, you know, having that kind of emblem on your resume was extremely valuable in terms of providing the opportunities in the med device world that I was targeting. So,
And that you ended up jumping over that way after
I
that?
did. Yeah, no, totally. I actually moved from California. I relocated to the Midwest, back to where I went to college in Missouri, and I sold capital in the med device world. So sold, you know, more or less the devices, less than like the implants. I sold the capital that would go into the OR or that would go into like a plastic surgery dermatology office. And that career was amazing for me, to be honest. I've seen some incredible things and worked for some incredible companies. And to be honest with you, never would have envisioned myself being in like a neurosurgery case, you know? I think as a joke, like I always used to use the word neuro, like, oh, what are you, a neurosurgeon, as like a joke or, you know, kind of like as a poke to a friend. And then I found myself sitting in these in these ORs with neurosurgeons and sort of like found myself being a resource to them, which was just mind blowing as well.
Yeah.
Like, you know, thinking about that kid and where he was at, even thinking about that young adult and where he was
Doing
at.
that market research to be where you're at now.
Yes. Yeah. Like just kind of like, oh my gosh, you know, intense situations, but also very gratifying, you know, when you kind of are also in this world of sales. Like it's unique to be able to sell something that's saving or changing lives, you know? And so I felt great doing that. Like payroll changes lives, don't get me wrong. Like we pay people and all that, but to be able to remove, you know, an astrocytoma from somebody's head that was, you know, preventing them from having clear thought or keeping balance or potentially also like life-saving measure. It was really cool kind of being in that situation as a representative. And the weird part about it was that I got to fill a void, which was the product, but I didn't get to meet the patient and I didn't oftentimes get to meet the family or whatever. I just got to kind of show up, strap up the boots, make sure my product, and it was resecting tumors at the time, make sure that was operating at its highest capacity so that the patient outcome was high. It made me feel good, you know?
Yeah.
So that was one of the greatest achievements for me personally, was being able to get into the sales career in a corporate level, but also being able to transition it to something that was meaningful or impactful. So
speaking of that transition, when did the idea of starting your own business come back into the fold?
that's a great question. Like I loved the OR space, and it was one of those things where again that feel good nature was really, I think, a big driver for me. And then COVID hit. You know, and in 2020, when things got shut down, the hospitals obviously were overwhelmed, and the focus on the hospital side became less about the operating room and more about just, again, overall health. And the budgets changed, the overall concept and sort of realization that the hospital had from a moving forward perspective was always, I think, you know, in alignment with my career, and it immediately changed to be out of alignment with my career. And I think I realized it really fast. Like I noticed the change almost effective immediately. So I'd say that's where, for me, like I felt this forever career really kind of lose its footing when COVID hit. And I think if I were in any other space, I maybe wouldn't have felt it as abruptly, but having been in the OR and having that be one of the first things that essentially got shut down post-COVID, I really kind of, it was a jolt to the system, to say the least.
Yeah. So you thought to yourself, okay, I have to do something different. Why think about going into business for yourself versus let me go find some other career?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was all those years that I kind of had alluded to of just seeing my dad sort of persevere, and also sort of, you know, I think also have control, like in the weirdest of ways, like he had control over, you know, maybe not when his phone would ring or, you know, when his day would end, but he had control over you know, what school I would go to, or he had control over honestly, like what kind of vacations, you know, our family when and what kind of vacations we could take. Just these minor things that ended up not becoming very minor for me because it's exactly what I want to be able to replicate and provide for my kid. But I think all of those little impactful moments and all those tidbits of driving in the car and kind of hearing him had aggregated enough confidence inside of me. I just didn't know what I was going to do. And I'll say this, I mean, humbly, I'm not like the world's smartest guy. I mean, I was a C student, barely got through college. Like, I mean, for me, I think, you know, I think of things more as achievements that aren't, I've been able to accomplish a lot in life that aren't necessarily like, you know, merit based. Like it's not a degree or whatever, but, you know, in terms of the struggle and then the perseverance, like I do feel that I've been good at that in life. And so where I kind of felt the confidence was that I should be an operator or an owner, but I had no clue how or what. And I could not, again, replicate what my dad had created because there were so many years of experience and so many good people with years of experience that were part of his team. I could not recreate that. So I kind of had to go to the drawing board a little bit. And yeah, I mean, interesting story if you want me to get into it about how we kind of landed on seasonal.
I do want to know about that because I think the little teaser I give the audience, which I know we did at the beginning here, which is you don't usually think if you're starting a business, let me do something that's maybe I can only do for about a month and a half, you know? So tell me about how that journey went from being like, that's the business I'm going to go with.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking before the pod started about at-bats, and at-bats are real, right? So when I think about the sales career, what I was really good at was creating at-bats daily. And that was just based off of my activity or my own production, right? So I'd get at-bats, and then through each at-bat, I'd get better. So by the time I went into a year of a career, I was incredibly talented at it because I would just try to replicate at-bats and learn and learn and learn. Well, seasonal business, yeah, man, Christmas happens once a year. Realistically, I like to also call this business what I like to say is a zero-sum model. So, like, if I don't sell you your Christmas tree, someone else is, and I have no shot because you're not going to get two. So, the seasonality is a huge aspect of this business, but also the notion that being able to attract and retain that customer long term is extremely important because we are a zero-sum model. So I almost bank on people coming back to me the next year. I'm pre-purchasing your tree if you came and visited us because we try to be differentiated, and we obviously try to earn your business. But the fact is that we can never really properly forecast. So that's really tough when you kind of aggregate the entire model. Where I find seasonal to be extremely rewarding is that it's fast paced and it comes and it goes, and it's like feels maybe even a little bit like a concert, you know, like all this planning, all this prep, and it happens, and then it's kind of like next year the festival will come back and we'll do these things different, and we'll fix these crowd issues, and the cell towers were, and so we got all these things, but we got to wait 11 months to aggregate all this information and then execute it.
Mm-hmm. Why did y'all decide on that though? What was the thing that piqued your interest about Christmas trees?
Man, I absolutely knew for a fact I have very low capability with like running and operating a tech business or a app-based business or a anything really that sort of was like kind of technological or advanced, really. I mean, I hate to like discredit myself, but like I knew these things about myself. I have an incredible drive, I have an incredible work ethic, and I'm extremely competitive, and I have a big heart. So like when I think about the business model, the big heart aspect is almost more important than the other three in the sense that like when I try to do something, my goal is always to try to spread wealth, whether it's intellectual or in some cases maybe it's even opportunity or philanthropy or whatever. So that was, I think, where, from my perspective, we really we did a good job of creating a business model that was seasonal, but like had these 3 to 4 different elements that sort of made it a reason why, seasonal for me, to be honest. I love Christmas. It's the best time of the year for families. We pride ourselves, I think, in also trying to give back. So the element that we all kind of forget is that like Christmas is great for some folks and it's not so great for others. Having started this business, I've learned more about that than really anything. Is that through even my employees, like just having discussions with them about how painful Christmas is for them because of their experiences growing up and seeing everyone around them get stuff and them not get stuff or whatever. It's been eye-opening how important and impactful that season is for families in general. And so operating inside of that is really kind of fun and was inspiring for us. We got into it in 2022 with realistically kind of a smaller mindset, and we quickly realized that there was a lot of legs in the seasonal model because families really did pour into us our first year. So, yeah, long answer there, but
No, I think it's great. I mean, so when you think about maybe so folks kind of understand the business of it or like even some of the logistics behind it, then I want to get into kind of y'all's special sauce for bringing in.
yeah,
You think about, I mean, we've all at least been a part of it to some degree, whether it's observing or go get our tree every year. There's a lot of different ways you can get your tree. Just talk to folks about like what folks are doing when they come to you and what it takes to get all those trees there. And then I want to pick your brain about what gets people coming back.
yeah. No, it's actually a crazy process when you kind of break it down into the nuts and bolts. The Christmas tree business as a whole is crazy. So for context, we typically kind of get our season started in the middle of November, and that start becomes like heavy, intense labor where we're essentially cultivating bare land to become retail sites. So that's anything from, again, land management, so mowing, leveling, getting these contracts, right? So getting the properties for our multiple locations under contract early enough that we can have a go live date sometime in November, cultivating the land, setting up tents or whatever sort of, structure we're operating under, is sort of the front part of it. And that
How soon do you have to get that locked in?
Oh man, like I'm early bird gets the worm. I always try to do multi-year, and I'll always try to, rather than try to figure out where we're going to be next year, I'm a fan of trying to lock down where we're at and then potentially, evaluating some newer spots. But yeah, early in the year, I mean, well before summer. I mean, you're not
Are
even
these old farmers like, or who are you finding this land from?
No, I've got 3 locations here in Austin, and we sort of have had a unique experience operating in both land and at like, we're in parking lots. We're at Barton Creek Mall or Round Rock Premium Outlet Mall, and so finding property that is conducive for our operation, but like. Yeah, it could sort of, again, be a variation for us of who and where. That's a whole different kind of rabbit hole that, I do have some methodology behind that. And my goal is to never really expand unless we're truly purposeful in our expansion. So we get these contracts and hopefully kind of plan on them being a longer term life cycle for us. And we've been, again, lucky that since we started in 2022, we've sort of been able to formalize some long-term relationships and locations that have really, I think, been beneficial for the Austinite community to sort of come and find, rather than trying to play a game of whack-a-mole and figure out where we pop up next. They know where we are and they can kind of expect to see us each year.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it adds to also their kind of bringing folks into their places of business and stuff as well. So y'all are working on that well ahead of time. When does the getting of the trees happen, and where does that happen from?
Totally, yeah. The trees are the tricky part, and to be honest with you, from a newer business perspective, I had very little information on that side of the fence, and so I learned some really hard lessons because procurement with these farms happens in the middle of the summer, usually in June. So. When you start thinking about, the average business and maybe even you think about like a restaurant, they might be making their orders weekly in terms of produce. Well, we're making our orders 6 almost 7 months in advance of go live. And so the thought process of what your actual location needs to look like and its bandwidth source needs to be figured out well in advance of your tree order. So like this difficult aspect of the business is the planning and sort of the forecasting to be able to sort of back yourself into the right quantities of trees from the right growers, to again serve the right population of customers in your local areas. It's almost impossible.
Yeah,
I mean,
like y'all's first year, how did y'all decide what to get?
Man, I've got a buddy of mine, and I'll shout him out. His name's Brandon, and I appreciate him deeply because, like I said, mentorship's a big piece of my reason why, and pretty much everything I've ever accomplished in life. But from a mentorship perspective, Brandon let me come out in 2021 before I really launched, and he gave me he's done such a great job. He's in California and Florida. He's in multiple locations throughout both of those states, and I just said, could I come out and I could, just kind of like, I'll stay at a hotel, but like, I just want to work there for like 4 days straight and just like kind of soak it all in. And he said yes. And so I kind of knew a little bit about the business, but then I was able to kind of tap him on the shoulder and be like, hey dude, I have no idea how many 6-foot trees to order in comparison to 7-foot trees. Like, help me here. How many 10-foot trees, how many, and so the guidance there was invaluable, but I would imagine that there's a lot of folks that if you were to interview somebody who started first year in the seasonal business, they made a crucial mistake year one, a huge mistake. And that could be, you burn your tree, that might be your profit or your potential to even come back the following year.
Wow,
so I was, again, very lucky in the mentorship. If I have a lesson throughout this podcast, it's like I was never the smartest guy in the room. I typically had to tap the shoulder of somebody who had done it before me, or honestly had a thought grander than mine. And I've been able to sort of find a way to differentiate their model to be unique for us. But nothing's original, honestly.
No, well, I mean, I think that's kind of the telltale sign of somebody who's just a real owner. We got... It's like a common thing we see on the show with owners. They have usually two qualities. One, so you're DJ, but a TJ coined this phrase, which is like, at least on the show, which is like they have dog in them. And it's just like that ability to find a way to win no matter what, even if it means you're probably on the verge of breaking some rules. You're okay getting hit on the hands because that's just like what it takes to keep your business going. The other thing, which is what you just described, which is this... I call it almost courage. It's like this courage where most folks, I think, who are maybe on the, straight A analytical kind of side of things, typically can feel like they can work their way to a solution. There's some academia out there that they can kind of lean on, where the background with a lot of these owners seem to be just more like this humility of like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but I bet you somebody else does. And I have enough guts to go be vulnerable, humble enough to go figure out what that looks like. I can only imagine that probably saved y'all from ordering. I mean, I can only imagine you seems like some of these shots, you only have one time to get it right. Otherwise you're not in business ever again, with this business, at least.
100%. And I feel like that's, again, that wealth of knowledge that, that I'm sort of, again, able to maybe provide somebody today is all mistakes, all trials, all error, and I think that, like, that's where I've always grown, by the way. Like, I've got a long history of recovery and sort of like, I mean, never have I ever been in a dire spot, but I've always felt like I could do better or be better. And so I've had this like unique, I'd say, path in life where, nothing's come easy, but like through the trial or the tribulation has come great wealth or knowledge. And so, like when you kind of talk about the analytical brain or the straight A's, like they're missing a lot of the critical errors that I've made, but I also feel like I've taken risks that have sort of put us in sort of like quantum leap kind of, manifestation. Whereas, that's been fun and it's been cool and it's been rewarding, but I'll be honest with you, having, I think we were on the pod and we were live when I said it, but I like to draw the finish line and then I kind of work backwards. man, through this endeavor, I would never probably start that way ever again. I'd kind of try to figure out what kind of finish line I'd like to draw, but I'd start at the finish line and start at the starting line and kind of work my way towards it with a lot of pivotal change. I think big too. Like, I'll be honest with you. I think, a lot of the folks that probably sit in this chair may have that same mindset. Like, I wouldn't have started this business if I thought it was just going to be just like one little tree lot. Like, I kind of was hopeful that like one little tree lot could become like a market share dominance throughout the state of Texas. So like, that's my finish line, but I had to, again, start somewhere. And so, that's been the humbling kind of, I think, experience for me, is that like I keep wanting to push and grow and grow and grow. But as a business owner, you have to be smart, and you can't just throw all that, especially after a successful season. You can't really say, hey, after that was successful, let's just go for the gusto. Like, we just want to keep aggregating that success. So the one big thing for me, seasonal business, is the lessons are hard because you learn them and then you got to wait 11 months. And then, the overall growth model, it's sort of slow and steady because, again, we have just one shot a year to kind of get it right.
Yeah.
So those restrictors have been tough, but I think really important and meaningful in terms of like the business acumen.
When you got that first year done, was it immediately, we're doing this again? Or did you kind of consider, maybe this didn't go as well as you had hoped, maybe not? What were the things at the end of the season?
As a matter of fact, I remember during the season. So our big thing, by the way, just if I can just plug Holiday and Harvest and what we are experiential. So like, what you may have done in your Christmas tree journey in life is you've probably gone to somewhere and you've probably either seen your tree displayed and you said, that's the one, and you pick it and then you take it home. And that's about the extent of your experience. What we try to do is sort of differentiate a little bit. So what we're doing is we're immediately putting together photo opportunities. The second you walk into our lot, there's already kind of a welcome sign for you and your family to jump behind, take photos.
Yeah.
The goal is that welcome sign will never change. So as your family matures, you'll be able to have these like stack ranks where you'll be like, hey, here was 2022 and here's 2028. Because I feel like those are the important photos in family houses where you kind of are like, oh my gosh, look at that growth of that kid at that pumpkin patch or at that Christmas tree farm, right? So again, that's a big differentiator for us, is the experience side. Now we also we hang candy canes everywhere. We tell the kids like, go crazy. I set up the trees with no rebar on the ground. There's zero trip hazard. We have it set up like, let your kid tear loose in there, because we have it staggered where the trees become a micro forest and they can go get lost and play tag and all that. And we encourage that behavior. We love it. We love laughs, we love giggles, and we love smiles. And so I kind of like made that our measurable, was like, we're not going to be measured necessarily off the revenue year one. We're going to be measured off of the smiles and the impact. And I feel like that baseline for us has really kind of been, if we did not have that year one, so yeah, I had help with the numbers. I had help with the overall kind of theory behind it. But like, where I feel like we as a business did a great job was we focused really heavily on experience, and that necessarily didn't translate to profit, but it solidified us as different and as unique and as desirable.
Yeah, and people want to come. It seems like you had, at least from what I'm reading, you had this idea of creating tradition in what y'all are doing. The tradition, not just picking a tree, but going to y'all's place.
Yes.
To pick a tree. And it seems like natural for you to come up with, right? I mean,
totally.
Based on your life and experience.
Totally. And I kind of flaked on the question, but to come back, and when I noticed that experience was sort of like, it was electric, and we could feel it, by the way. Like, I could legitimately feel it. Like, customers would come in and be like, we've never had so much fun. And you're like, oh my gosh, yes. Like, that's way more important than your checkout price, by the way. Like, I could care, I could care less. Like, hearing that was like one of those things that was highly motivating. We started planning Easter, So like, seasonal business, what are we going to do, January through November? Like, I started talking to people, be like, hey, would you come to an Easter thing? If we did an experience like this and you're here buying your Christmas tree. What if we did something for Easter? Would you show up? And they're like, if you did something halfway as fun as this for Easter, we would come 100%. I was like, all right, great. Like week would go by, and then by the end of the Christmas season, I was like, hey, would you guys come if I dropped Easter eggs out of a helicopter? I got 100% yes. So we started planning a helicopter Easter egg drop for the following year, and that's what we did in Easter. So one thing I feel like from a differentiation standpoint that we're doing well is at Holiday and Harvest is like our core and our bread and butter is the Christmas tree business, but we want to be in your household or at least have an offering for your family during the off season for us, which could be Easter or it could be fall. So pumpkins and Easter eggs are also in play for us.
Yeah, well, it's good. Like talk about market study. You're able to do that in real time with the folks that are buying trees through y'all.
Yeah.
So you get okay. So tell me about like. I'm sure you didn't come out of that first year unscathed. Like what was, or even the second year, like what were some things you've learned? Well, actually, before this though, one thing I forgot to ask you earlier, where are all these trees coming from? Because Texas, in my mind, isn't known for the iconic Christmas tree. I got a good mesquite tree in the backyard. I love a good live oak, but I don't see anybody pulling that into their house. Where do these really great Christmas trees come from? And then I want to ask you about maybe some burn marks along the way.
Yeah, totally. No, great question. So these trees are definitely not grown in Texas. And if they were, I would highlight, anything in Texas is like highly favorable for me. We try to pull anything and everything out of Texas we possibly can. The trees are tough. Obviously, we're here in kind of a sub-desert, and Christmas trees are traditionally grown either on the East Coast or on the West Coast. And so, there's a lot of value in sort of thinking through what kind of Christmas tree is desirable, right? And I think for me, and maybe it's my past and sort of where I grew up, having come from the West Coast, but like I think of Christmas trees being very, very like photo-esque, to be honest. They sort of look either like a Douglas fir or like a noble fir to me. And I know that's a really specific type, and I know those varieties, but like what I mean by that is like they either look like the perfect Christmas tree or they're like the perfect Christmas tree. And like, I don't really love trying to think of anything outside of that. It was kind of like easy for me to conceptualize what kind of tree we were going to offer. It was just like, I'm going to offer the best and the most premium, and they're going to look like how everybody expects Christmas trees to look. And a buddy of mine, I'll shout him out real quick too. His name's Jess Carson. He is a phenomenal guitar player in a band called Midland, but he grew up on a Christmas tree farm. And I was at a show and we were backstage talking, and I was like, dude, I'm starting Christmas trees this year. Like, this is going to be the year and blah, blah, blah. He's like, you got to call my dad. My dad still is like at this Christmas tree farm. They're in Oregon. Just figure it out. You got to call him. And so I'm like, give me his number. So I called Gene Carson and had this just great talk with him about sort of like a talk like we're having. Like, I had all these ideas, but I had never really executed, and I never bought a Christmas tree in my life. I had so much to learn. And he kind of was like, hey, I'm sort of transitioning out, but I want to introduce you to my backfill, my vice president of sales. And he introduced me to a gentleman named Dave, and Dave just was like almost like the tree god, man. Like, I would ask him, how long do these things take to grow? And he'd answer it was like, I had this encyclopedia with Dave that taught me everything about these Christmas trees, because they weren't in Texas, right? So also, like, I'm talking about a product that's afar, and I don't have visualization.
How long does a Christmas tree take to grow to the point where you guys are able to folks bring it into their house?
Great question. So like, we carry we'll carry 3 varieties. One's hyperallergenic. It's called a Nordman fir. But typically Christmas trees take about a year, and they'll grow a foot a year. So I said that kind of awkward, but yeah, a foot a year in terms of growth. That's for a Douglas fir, which is kind of your more like traditional Christmas tree. The more premium trees called noble firs, they take about a year and a half to grow a foot. So, a 10-foot tree is about 15 years old on that variety, whereas a 10-foot tree in a Douglas fir is about 10 years old.
Wow, man.
But they take a while, and you think about those farms. Some cool things I've learned also about these farms, you kind of, as the operator, I kind of have the benefit of like experiencing and touching and smelling and seeing the goods. But growing them and cultivating them is a whole different model and almost a whole different beast. And so, having gotten a relationship with this farm, I mean, they have to be very specific about the growth orientation of these things. So you can't just go and cut down your field of 7-foot trees, or you won't have 8-foot trees next year. So you gotta be smart. You gotta plan. You gotta stagger. And so there's a lot of prepping and planning that goes into the farming, but a lot of work too. You know, when you think about how many Christmas trees are leaving the Oregon or, you know, big area. North Carolina is another big area for Christmas trees. During that season, it's churn and burn. They got helicopters flying. What they do is they cut the trees. They'll lay down a big rope, metal rope. They'll lay the trees flat. And they'll fly a helicopter over. They'll ignite a magnet, and the magnet will attach, take that bundle of trees up from the forest, and they'll helicopter it down to a staging area. So, like, you know, when you think about these farms during this time of year, you've got helicopters flying over your head. You've got 53-foot truckloads, tractor trailers just lined up, you know, for miles. And they snowpack all these trees. So as they're laying them in there, you know, they're blowing snow on top of it.
Just to keep them
cool. Just to keep them cool for the transportation to Texas.
Wow, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a whole entire...
I mean, that in itself is a whole production.
Oh, man.
And then it just starts y'all's beginning.
That's what's wild to me. Is like it's kind of like the OR, right? It's like, man, I got to see like just the coolest 20% of the case in neurosurgery, which was like, you know, we actually saw the patient under the microscope and we were doing, you know, the actual case, like we were doing the surgery, but all the prep work that went on, you know, months in advance, all the scans that went into the MRIs that we were putting up on, you know, on screen to actually see that tumor when we get in there. It's a lot like the Christmas tree business where you're like, man, I'm only in that 20% vessel of like, we're retail, but like cultivating is so intense, labor intensive, but also planning. I mean, when I started really getting this relationship going with the farm, I mean, we started talking about like what's next year look like, because they want to try to orient their growth to be aligned with mine. But if I'm not communicating with them, they may not be able to actually grow with me. So just a lot there's so much, that goes into the farming side of the business as well.
What a cool biz, man. I mean, what a cool biz behind the biz. So,
yeah.
Totally. So y'all talk to me about the burn marks, man, or like the scrapes y'all have along. Like what the first couple of years, what about this business were y'all like, oh my gosh, close calls?
Close calls, there's countless. I think also just wake up calls. Like for context, for all y'all that are you know thinking about that jump and that leap of faith of starting a business, I had a kid the first season, and my kid was born September 19th. We actually did pumpkin patches that year, so pumpkin patches launched I think 11 days after, and we went right into Christmas, and you know. Dealing with the pressure of all those burn marks with also having a newborn kid was like, is this really for me? Like it was so much pressure and so difficult that like, I mean, it just felt like it was either going to make or break me. But like I said, those positive feedback of the smiles or the like, oh my gosh, you know, we've never had so much fun buying Christmas trees. Those were the gasoline in the tank in like a really hard morning, you know, like middle of December, year one. Because the burn marks would be like, it could be anything. It could be weather. Like I could wake up and it could be our Saturday where essentially we're going to go bonkers. It's the biggest weekend and like we're in Texas and we might get a band of rain that realistically kind of like puts a grassy area into like a muddy pit area, right? And then you're like, how am I getting cars in and out of the space? Are we pulling cars out with chains or are we selling Christmas trees? Like, those things are real. So like from a burn mark perspective, the uncontrollables from Mother Nature are real. Man, just dealing with other humans can sometimes be difficult. So we talked about the complications of cutting down these trees. Well, we're shipping them from Oregon all the way to Texas. And if I'm also like, hey, I might need these trees sooner than expected, like those types of turnarounds are very crucial because 3 days in this business might be like the sum of 3 weeks in a normal business. So just the intensity and the immediate need for something is real as well. And you have no control. That's, I think, the hard part too, is when you're in business ownership. And I know every different business has its own uniqueness, but like when we're operating outdoors or when we're relying on, forget what it was our first year, but our truck was a day behind because of fires, and maybe it was a fire that was happening somewhere. And yeah, it just was like out of our control, but we had to push customers, and they were like, hey, we're here and we want these trees. And we're like, we don't have them. We got to come. And we ended up pushing everybody to a Monday. Well, that Monday ended up being the craziest day for us because we were unloading a truck. Everyone wanted their tree because we told them they're coming Monday. And you're like, what do we do here? Like your hands are kind of tied. We're doing our best. We're unloading the trees as fast as possible. I know you want your Christmas tree, but these things are out of our control. So, those types of burn marks were consistent, but like, man, the big ones for me, just cash flow, like being able to manage cash flow, having no experience, having worked in corporate structure. Like I always had an admin to submit things to that would sort of put things together. And like, now I'm admin on anything. I'm quality control when it comes to verifying the order and making sure that I didn't leave a crucial item out, or like just these big responsibilities that I just really wasn't used to. And I'd make a mistake, and I'd sort of feel the pressure of the mistake or the burn mark, but I would never really allow it to like throw us completely into disarray. I would try to like problem solve immediately, or I would find ways to educate our customer base of what's going on and why they could be patient with us. And I feel like those things were huge for us, man. Like we just didn't do things willy-nilly. We didn't rush. If we were, again, hitting these roadblocks or obstacles, we would just kind of like, how do we deal? It's going to not be fun, but how do we deal? And then trying to find the solution there rather than the chaos. And
you have everything. It seems to me that everything you're working with and dealing with is a moving object, just from like my perspective. Getting the product there, sure. But then you also are like, these are living things.
Totally.
And so you're like trying to keep this tree rocking and rolling. You got humans, they're in the spirit, probably slightly impatient because of this, Christmas experience they're trying to bring to life and get the tree set up in their house. And even if you knew they're going to be there on Monday, are they going to go somewhere else to go buy their thing? I can imagine that multi-dynamic kind of decision matrix and all being done, which sounds like 17x speed, because it's not like you have all year long to consider this process. It's even probably shorter than what people think, because you want the tree in the house well before Christmas, so you can enjoy that experience, right? That's not like
this weird
sell trees before Christmas.
Man, it's so funny. You alluded to it. And it's like, I think a lot of people, when I do talk about the business, are like, oh, your world must be crazy come like, middle to late December. And I'm like, no, actually, like my world is crazy well before that, because you nailed it. I mean, folks typically want to enjoy the Christmas tree in the home well before Christmas. So, my wife has been super supportive in this endeavor. But one thing I'm really trying to work on is being able to be more present, because like this eats up our Thanksgiving. This eats up part of, honestly, like, you think about trick-or-treating and all those fun things that we get into the seasons. Like we start our planning and it gets really real fast. And this is typically the time where like people pour in on family. And it's kind of the time, unfortunately for me, and I'm again trying to kind of find this healthy balance for my little family. But like, how do we not feel so much pressure on the front end of the season, and sort of how can we plan and be able to sort of, like, I always say, like, land the plane rather than crash land the plane, like have a plan, talk to the folks at the flight deck and make sure that like everything's clear, and land the plane is sort of the goal. It's not really come to fruition because we're still relatively new, but like that's where I really hope, from an operator perspective, I'm confident in our model. I'm confident in what we provide in a product to our customers. The piece that I want to be better at is how can I be a better like father, husband, while still running and controlling the highest operational level of the small business. And like the seasonal side of it is really tough, The crazy part about the day, if you think about the day of, let's call it a seasonal business, especially in the Christmas tree world, but like the day typically is filled with work intensive labor. So we're picking these trees up from typically a holding area, throwing them on our shoulder, throwing them into a tree stand, opening them, then immediately taking them out of that tree stand when they're purchased, throwing them back on our shoulder, taking them out, baling them, cutting them, then throwing them onto on top of a truck or a car or a vehicle, tying them down, making sure that's safe. The whole process as you rinse and repeat throughout the day, it wears on you.
No
and
doubt.
then you add in weather. You add in a 35, 40 degree day, and your hands are cold and your feet are numb, and and all this sort of is like it's like UFC. It's like, once you're in like, by like first couple weekends, you're like round one and you're like, yeah, I feel all right. But by the end of the season, you feel a little bit like that guy who's like bloody on the mat and he's got some thumps on his eye. And, you feel it certainly. Like you really, I think if you're getting into the business we're in, you have to be okay with the soreness and the actual, like, there is some blue collarness to our workload.
Yeah, the physicality of it.
Physicality is no joke, for sure.
As we I think the amount of things you could probably talk about, it's so funny. The amount of things you could talk about a seasonal business is probably endless. But I do wonder for folks that are out there that are considering it, like, what are the big things that keep you doing season, like keep you saying, hey, I'm just committed to this seasonal business? And what are the things you'd go be cautious about? Like, this is something that, this is my cautionary tale before you decide to jump into something like that.
I mean, super impactful question, to be honest, because I feel like even from my friends and family, like, I get to go around and people are like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, hold on, like, let me preface, because you say, like, I do Christmas trees, pumpkin patches, drop Easter eggs out of a helicopter, I sometimes set up tents for folks and festivals and, just stay busy. They're like, well, how do I do? It sort of sounds, and I don't understand it, but it somehow sounds very achievable. And the revenue on each one of those things is very unique and it can be challenging. So, like, yeah, I mean, I would say cautionary tale is this isn't something where you could start it and immediately find it to be a highly productive growth model. You need to sort of commit to a long-term growth plan. You kind of have to commit to also just, more or less of starting small and sort of hoping that it becomes a kind of a community token, and that would be your growth, right? Where I feel like it's the best business in the world is like my son, he's 3 now, and we've been doing pumpkin patches and Christmas tree lots since he's been born. And like, I get to see him get these photos every single year. And like, one of the things that warms my heart is I'm like, I don't know if it'll ever happen, and it's very doubtful that it will, but if we keep growing, the goal would be that all his buddies and all his friends and maybe even his future girlfriend or whatever's prom date, like, when he goes into their houses, he sees his dad's business on the wall.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where, like, for me, that's my, like, I keep pushing, Now, does that, like, pay the bills, and does that, like, do all the beautiful things that I want to provide for my family? No, it absolutely does not. But it's a high motivator for me, and I believe in myself, and I believe in our methodology and our differentiation, that can somehow, some way be profitable and be, representative of a reason why we're doing the business. But, like, truly, like, that's where I get a lot of, like, goosebump moments in our business, is sort of that, like, rewarding family to family communication or validation that we're doing something cool.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, there's no dollars behind that. And so I'm hoping, like, that's why I'm a big proponent of, like, I want us to have those photo exhibits. I want us to be experience-based. I want folks to feel like they're at Holiday and Harvest and it's identifiable, because I feel like that's where we're gonna grow, and I haven't touched on it, and it's maybe not even something that, like, I typically try to plan on highlighting, but, like, one thing we do also at Holiday and Harvest is we're locally owned. Like, I'm a local guy to Austin. care about our community. I'm highly involved from a service standpoint. And each year we try to find a reason why. And our reason why is typically like we want to grow, but we want someone else to benefit from our growth as well. It shouldn't solely be reflective of us. So we've always had a philanthropy focus on our side of the business. And I think the philanthropy helps us sort of achieve a kind of like a give back, or like a token as a thank you back to the families that are sort of partaking in the seasonal side and trusting us. Like they're trusting us with their smile and with the checkout experience and all of that. But like we also have this piece of us that like we're like, thank you. You know, you're driving us, you know, as you're our customer, but like you're driving us. And during that time, everyone is in sort of this giving nature. I'll notice it. We hire a lot of high school kids, tons of high school kids, really rewarding for us. And we try to develop and teach them good, you know, work habit and all that. And the best notion that you can see if someone's picking up on the kind of the qualities that are required, or how well they're doing in their tips. When we tie down the Christmas trees and you have a high school kid, they're often greeted with tip money. That has been something where I'm like, oh my gosh, like watching how giving everybody is during this season, with tips, or just, again, you know, somebody who's giving extra effort to do something, was very evident. And so when we tied the philanthropy in, it was like an immediate,
just made sense,
synergy. Yeah, it made total sense. And when families would check out, they didn't even know that we were going to be donating. Each tree we sell is a direct donation to a nonprofit. And so they didn't know that. And when we would tell them, they were appreciative of it. And so I think that also was a big piece for us of like, let's just pour in, you know, let's pour in rather than be like highly profitable. Let's pour in and let's make sure folks feel like there's a real reward to choosing us over somebody else. They can choose anybody, you know, but there's a real reward if you do choose us, whether it's the experience you get directly on site, or sort of, again, our token is our reason why is philanthropy. So
yeah,
that's a big piece of us.
I'd
Huge.
say, I mean, there's no other, not only good, I mean, it's on its own is a good deed, but also there's no better way to rally a team to get up every day and go, like, at least if there's no other reason why it's still good to push through a sore back and cranked neck and everything else. It's because you get to go help somebody else that does need it, you know, whatever. And I can see that being a pretty galvanizing experience. DJ, man, I'm looking forward to getting out there and like maybe you guys putting me to work and like hauling some trees. I mean, especially, I mean, I'm not looking at starting a Christmas tree company, but I do love Americans out there still like working their butts off to get it done. And I appreciate you coming in here today and sharing, like, again, what probably is just the tip of the iceberg of what a seasonal business is. I think it's clear to me that there's so much work that goes into it. I think most folks probably think, man, it must be nice just to work like 2 months out of the year. And the reality of it is just not true. Yeah. And so I think you shed more than enough light on that today, man. But I also think that coming in here and sharing a little bit about kind of the behind the scenes on this Christmas season that we all really enjoy, and knowing that there are still people working hard through it and not taking off just so that everybody else gets to also enjoy it in a big way, matters a ton. So I appreciate you coming in here and sharing that little bit of insight in with us. And I do hope we find a way to put me to work out there and kind of see behind the scenes.
I would love it. I'll be honest. It's kind of one of those things you get sort of that rush and you're like, oh man, I might need to come out next weekend too. But man, we'd love to see you out there.
Well, we'll after this, I know this was kind of already cooking, but I'm really curious. You get me put a location, maybe you can show me a day in your life on what that looks like. Cause I do think that is something a lot of us get to participate in the tree stuff, but maybe just the owner appreciator in me always just wants to know how it all actually comes to life. I can't go to a place without going, how did this come to be to begin with? And so this gave me a little insight into that, man. But thanks again for jumping in today and sharing the words. Appreciate everything you do. And it looks like you guys are hot and heavy wind starting here pretty soon.
Yeah, man, we're go live. So right now we're kind of in the throes of pumpkin installations and doing all the pumpkin business. And then it realistically just we switch hats. It's like it's almost like the switch goes on, and it's like Christmas is officially on probably about first week in November. We really are kind of like
you guys are in
hyper focused, man. Yeah, and then we go all the way through January because we do tree deliveries and we do trees. We pick them up, for folks that are again kind of. What do we do with our tree at the end of the season? We'll come and pick them up. So we wrap everything at the end of January. But then it's like planning for the next year.
Is it on to the next?
Yeah, man. Like you said, it's definitely not a 2-year or it's a 2-month business. It's somehow some way annualized, even though we're only operating 2 years or 2 months.
And on your site, everybody can find the different locations y'all are at, right?
Yeah, come find us at holidayandharvest.com. We're also on Instagram, Holiday and Harvest. If you're here in Austin, come find us in Dripping Springs. We've got a beautiful location, 12 and 290. We're at Barton Creek Mall here in Austin, and we're also up in the Northland at Round Rock Premium Outlets.
Dig it, man. Well, we'll see you out there. Thanks for tuning in to the American Operator Podcast, where we celebrate the backbone of America, small business owners and operators like you. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you'll never miss out on more of these stories and insights from people who keep our community strong. Until next time, keep building, keep operating, and keep America moving forward.